Welcome to Points of View, a discussion of issues regarding persons with disabilities, moderated by Doug Uziak.
Today's panelists are Diane Kruss, Education Advocate, OAHIIO. James Moody, Director, Independent Living of the Genesee Region. And Lynette Torgalski, Parent.
Welcome. For years we've been hearing the talk about special education, mainstreaming children with disabilities into the schools, full inclusion and participation for children with disabilities. So the question I want to start with is, what are we talking about when we're throwing out all these buzzwords and we're talking about, restricted and unrestricted environments within the school system? What does all that mean?
Well, you talked about inclusion. That is when children with a disability are mainstreamed. They're attending regular classes with the students who don't have disabilities, and some of the classes that they've been mainstreamed into have both a general ed and a special ed teacher in there.
Now, when we talk about restricted and unrestricted environments, Jim, what are we talking about?
A restricted environment could be a number of different things depending on whether or not the student is actually included within the school system or whether they have been moved to another building or another area where there's a program specifically for people with disabilities. But for the most part, within a school system, you could have a special room that is specifically for a person with a disability or included or mainstreamed into the general classroom for instruction.
Is that what we're talking about when we say center-based programming or not?
No, a center-based program will be outside of your district. There are programs that would specialize and meet the needs of that individual's IEP. So sometimes it could be a BOCES program or another center-based program in your area.
All right, we just threw out another buzzword, IEP.
Individualized educational profile that ensures that all special needs of the child are met. And that may include occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech pathology.
Now, is this IEP separate from those children who are participating in special ed activities?
Go ahead, Diane.
Some students who have special ed activities do have an IEP. Some have a 504. The IEP is a very specific one. That's paper written to meet each student's actual needs, where the 504 is written more to give the student a level playing ground with the non-special ed students in the class.
Now you threw out a 504. What are we talking about, a 504? Same as an IEP?
No, it's different. The 504 is a very general one. It might include things like using the resource room, having special seating in the class. With the IEP, as Lynette said, would have things such as seeing occupational therapists, seeing a physical therapist, having speech, having counseling.
Now, you're talking about these supportive services, things like OT, resource rooms. Is this something that's different from the kid without a disability in the school, or is this something supportive services we bring special to the child with a disability?
There are many different opportunities for students that attend our public and private school system. OT, ST, so forth, these relate to occupational therapy or speech therapy, depending on what the needs are of the individual child. Sometimes that is a person with a disability, and sometimes it's not. Someone is just a student without a disability, just needs some specific supports over a shorter period of time, as an example, might need some supports from a speech therapist, so they get that supports. So they can have a number of different resource supports, if you will, within the school system.
So these special supports that we're talking about, those supports are available for every single child within the school district?
Yes. Yeah, any student that's identified that has a need that requires those services. So if they do an evaluation that shows that a child is delayed in fine motor or hand-eye coordination, they would do an occupational therapy eval to determine if they needed occupational therapy services.
Who guides, directs, or oversees, monitors, assesses? I mean, how does this all come together for a parent and or a child?
Right, if a parent or a teacher believes that a child does need services, they would write a letter requesting that the CSE do the testing that they need, and then after it's evaluated, they determine whether or not the child actually fits the description of a child that needs the services.
So somebody outside the school has to make requests?
A parent can.
No, it can be a parent, a staff member, anybody who is working or has knowledge of the child can go to the Committee of Special Education and make the request that evaluations are completed and services are put into place if needed.
So there's a Committee on Special Education that looks at each and every child with a disabilities issue? Who's on these committees?
There are professionals on those committees, depending on what the needs of the child are. There are parents, there are teachers, there are other professionals within the school district itself, depending on what the child's needs are. And those committees, you mentioned the Committee on Special Education, is actually overseen by a special education chairperson who is employed by the school district. And there's also a Committee on Preschool Special Education as well, for the younger students.
But if this is the committee that determines the special needs of the child, who triggers what the special needs that are needed?
Ultimately, the Committee on Special Education or the Committee on Preschool Special Education, all of that information is given to the school board of the particular district. And it is the school board that actually determines whether or not the recommendations for that child are to be put into place. So every school board meeting, there is reports from the special education chairperson who brings that information to the school board, and the school board makes those approvals.
So if the disability is obvious, does that mean that the child has to come before this committee?
The student,
Even if they don't want it?
Well, I've never, you took me back for a minute, because I've never known in my experience with a school district of a child who does not want the supports that they have the opportunity for.
there are examples.
Well, we're going to have to take a break right here, and when we get back, we're going to look at the question I just asked, as long as, why is there a need for an advocate with all these people watching out for the kids? We'll see in a minute or two.
Today, people with disabilities are participating fully in the social and economic life of New York State. In large measure, this is true because of the work of an independent living center in your community. The New York State Independent Living Council is dedicated to promoting the independent living philosophy and to facilitating access to independent living services. For more information on the council or about your nearest independent living center, call toll-free 1-888-469-7452.
Are you looking for new ideas to help you sell? Need a presentation that must compel? Have a message you wish to dispel? Or an important story you need to tell? Are you exploring new ways to communicate, to motivate, to educate, or demonstrate? Or are you searching for creative concepts to help you entertain, promote your brand name, to effectively train, or launch a new web domain name? Then focus on Creative Concept Studios and see the possibilities.
Welcome back. We're talking about special education for children with disabilities, and pretty much we're focusing on the infrastructure of, at this point, who determines the needs and what the child needs within the school system. And with all these individuals that are watching out, you mentioned therapists and psychologists and special education chair people, principals, teachers, and nurses, and a whole group of individuals, which to me seems a little bit intimidating, but nevertheless, with all this help, why have I heard there are advocates for children with disabilities in the school system? Lynette, as a parent?
As a parent, an advocate is a great way to have another set of ears to get clarification. Sometimes there will be acronyms and language thrown out by the different therapists that a parent may not understand, that an advocate can clarify. An advocate can also make sure the voice of the individual is being heard when these things are being put into place that sometimes they don't want, especially when they're identified as a teen. An advocate is a great person to sometimes refer to other services that may not be internal in the school district, but external.
Yeah, but isn't there a sense, Diane, that, or I would think that all these experts would know what's best for the child?
Well, the experts know what most of their needs are, but sometimes through the testing, things are overlooked, and that's where an advocate can come in and look at the testing results and say, no, this is where I see the issue, where one of the professionals should have picked it up.
I also see that there's an opportunity from different professionals to actually see things from different points of view, and sometimes those points of view are not always the same. So thus the opportunity for advocates come into play to be able to advocate for the child, to assure that all of the different points of view are focused on the needs of the child.
Now,
and that's the most important thing.
All these services, all these individuals, special education committee, just occurred to me, how does your average parent even know any of this stuff exists? They don't. Lynette, you're a parent. You don't know?
Okay, I am a parent who has gone out and received several trainings, has been a parent member of their district. I'm one of few and far between, though, because there are many parents that are single parents who are overwhelmed, who don't even know where to begin or don't realize potentially that their child may have a disability. So there are many, many parents that do need an advocate to help and teach them the ropes. And it doesn't mean that they won't turn into an advocate themselves and help another parent.
Are school systems active in bringing forth the various supportive services that are needed for children with disabilities?
I believe they are. I believe school districts do an awful lot to assure that all the support systems are in place for the children. However, there's something to be said about every child does have a specific disability that is specific to their needs. So there's a large challenge as to how those needs are met. And with that, again, the need for advocates and the need for understanding from many different points of view, the community, the parent, the staff, the administration, and the child.
Well, we talked about supportive services and other people type of services, but what about the need of specialized equipment for those individuals who need the reading machines, the voice activated stuff, maybe some mobility devices? Is this something that the school systems also provide?
You can request through the CSE for certain
CSE?
equipment, the Committee on Special Education, for certain equipment that is going to allow the child to do their schoolwork. So if you need a computer with the voice program, you normally get a tech eval, and then the CSE would determine whether or not you're going to get the equipment.
So who pays for that tech eval?
Your taxes.
So in other words, that's another service within the schools.
Yes.
But if we educate our students, we allow them the equal opportunity, they'll be employable and they will be taxpayers. Versus if we are unable to educate them by providing them with those accommodations that they need. So you can look at short-term expense or you can look at long-term.
Yeah, but still, I mean, in the time, the era that we're in right now, where everybody's counting the dollars, don't these increased services, programs, and equipment add to the cost of education?
Sure.
Well, that becomes a burden within the districts then, right?
If the district's primary job is to educate, education should be the first expense they look at. And until they start cutting other things in the district that are opportunities for your regular ed students, nothing that affects a child's education should be looked at as an extra expense.
Well, how can you say occupational therapy or speech therapy isn't an additional expense to the education? I mean, you know, I went to school, it was reading, writing, and arithmetic.
And I'm not saying that it's not an additional expense. It is definitely, but that's where the school districts will use a certified occupational therapist instead of a full-out occupational therapist who oversees the plan. That's one way the district does spend money. Instead of providing services as all individual, sometimes they could look at group opportunities so that we have social skills that are being developed as well as their therapy versus them always doing them as individualized outside of. Things can be pushed into the classroom. There are ways as an advocate to actually save a district money, to get parents to view it in a different perspective than always having to be one-on-one and a huge expense. But if my child needs to be able to hold a pencil to get their education or have a piece of technology, then, you know, there are kids out there throwing footballs. And I'm sorry, that can be done through a park district. That can be done through another resource. Education is the primary idea of a school district.
I believe there's two schools of thought here, and the first one is accessibility and the need for accessibility in the schools and the different kind of equipment. I think that's a real opportunity for our school districts and the people who work within the school districts. I don't think the knowledge is there in the different kinds of accessibility that could help an individual child with a disability. Point one. Point two, I think that different other areas of education, not just the core courses, but also sports and art and music and therapy, all of those contribute to a person's education and should not be separated from the needs of a person with a disability.
We'll take a break right here, come back in a minute, and we'll be talking about the forgotten person in all of this, and that's the classmates.
Today, people with disabilities are participating fully in the social and economic life of New York State. In large measure, this is true because of the work of an independent living center in your community. The New York State Independent Living Council is dedicated to promoting the independent living philosophy and to facilitating access to independent living services. For more information on the council or about your nearest independent living center, call toll-free 1-888-469-7452.
Are you looking for new ideas to help you sell? Need a presentation that must compel? Have a message you wish to dispel? Or an important story you need to tell? Are you exploring new ways to communicate, to motivate, to educate, or demonstrate? Or are you searching for creative concepts to help you entertain, promote your brand name, to effectively train, or launch a new web domain name? Then focus on Creative Concept Studios and see the possibilities.
Welcome back. We're talking about children with disabilities as they head into the school system, and they are and their parents are involved with all the things that come with a disability and getting that education and the services. Diane, before I go into the next topic, you said you wanted to bring out a thought relevant to the cost of the equipment versus education.
Yes. I think the fact that they have all the sports for the students, I think that is a good idea. It does add to their education, but not at the expense of the special ed students who can't get a piece of equipment because that money is being spent on football or on soccer. And unfortunately, a lot of districts don't want to spend the money on special ed.
Well, one district out in western New York, Clarence, I mean, they cut a lot of that activity out. It was the parents that went out and raised some money for at least the fall semester. I guess they can get through the football season. But, you know, is there not a responsibility on the parents to do some of this?
There is a responsibility on the parent. There is, okay, I have 4 children. I don't just have one. I do have one that receives special education services, but I have 3 typical students who are involved in activities in their school. I contribute over 100 hours a year to their programs in district to make sure they still have them, because they were programs that were going to get cut last year. So as parents, we are responsible not just for our special ed students, but for our typical students as well. Parents need to be involved. Parents can help the expense of the districts. I think we've got too dependent on tax dollars paying for everything and forgetting that involvement is crucial across all students.
Well, let's talk about, as I said before the last break, that the forgotten individual here, and that's the classmate. How does all of this impact on the classmate of the kid with a disability? Are they benefiting from having individuals that have these special needs? I guess in some cases, if you come in with an electric wheelchair or a talking piece of equipment or an augmented communication device, I mean, it's certainly unusual. What is the child without the disability getting out of all of this?
I think they're getting a huge education, because what they see in the classroom is exactly what they'll see in life, in the community, outside of the classroom, outside of the school district. There are people with disabilities, with needs that they have to integrate with on a regular basis, whether it be in the supermarket or other stores or in community centers, wherever. And we are teaching, as a school district, I believe we are teaching them how to integrate with students on a regular basis, so that when they do leave the school system, that they're able to do that better for the life of not only themselves, but the betterment of the community.
But there are also students that do have behavior issues, and that's where I think the other students are at a disadvantage, because they're not going to learn while there's a behavior issue going on in the class. So that does disrupt everybody's education.
Yeah, but doesn't, if you have a behavior situation, I mean, in the good old days when we used to walk to school in our bare feet, if somebody misbehaved, they were a bad kid and they sat in the corner and went to the principal's office. Now we're talking about bringing in special resources and all kinds of equipment. Doesn't that encourage bad behavior or an attention play for other students to try to get a piece of that?
I guess it depends on the disability of the individual. There are some students with certain types of disabilities that may start learning those behaviors because they are delayed in their adaptive skills. But you're also going to have those behavior plans that are brought in to help curb those. Sometimes it's changing the environment, and sometimes it's looking at what may be causing the behavior. But I would have to say in defense that you're going to have typical students in the classroom that will cause greater disruption and interruptions to the education. And it shouldn't just be put on special education students that would cause that.
No, you're right. But what I was talking about are the kids that just get upset, and you're going to find a book being thrown across the room. And a lot of times those are the kids that are still labeled as regular ed kids. But when you have disruptive behaviors, it does hurt the education of everybody in the room, including the child with a disability.
Speaking about hurting the education, my understanding is that one time, for many years, we had this thing called an individualized education plan. Looked like a diploma. And by the time the child with a disability would graduate from school, they'd get this IEP framed and they could put it on the wall. And if they wanted to get a job, they had to go get a GED. And now New York State has changed that. To what? And for what? And is it any better than the old IEP? Boy, I asked another one of those hard questions.
I'm not sure if it's better. I think it has, time will tell, but I think one of the things that it is doing is the elimination of the IEP is allowing more of an inclusive nature theoretically for students to be able to receive the same kind of award, if you will, excellence, whatever kind of thing that, diploma, whatever someone gets when they graduate.
But should we not be pushing kids with disabilities towards that high school diploma and not an avenue of redirection just to get them through school and out?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we should.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that the elimination of the IEP, if you will, it is a separate designation from a high school diploma. And so this move that happened on July 1st of this year actually begins that process.
I think the biggest concern parents have about the name change is that they think a lot of employers see the word diploma on the IEP diploma, and they don't look farther than that. And parents are afraid that because the word diploma has been taken off, employers may not hire as many kids with disabilities.
But it isn't a high school diploma, is it?
No, okay, see, and this is where I'm okay, I am the parent. I am the parent. And to me, it's changing the name of a document. It's still not going to get a lot of these children any further. They cannot always go to the standardized test, but it doesn't mean that they're not capable individuals who can go into the workforce, who should be able to obtain a job, who should have the respect of the community. To me, if transition, it essentially to me is transitioning. And if it's not done appropriately by the districts, this document is truly worthless.
And we're going to stop right there, because if your child has a disability and you're going into the school district, obviously contact the school, contact the district. Identify those services and programs you need. Identify the advocates you may need. But get involved in your child's education. And we'll see you at our next show. Thank you.
Points of View is presented by the New York State Independent Living Council, Incorporated, in cooperation with the Catskills Center for Independence, Fingerlakes Independence Center, Independent Living of Niagara County, and Western New York Independent Living. For the location of the Independent Living Center in your area, call toll-free 1-888-469-7452.